And I can't make you like me. I can't make you like me. But I can make laws that protect me. And if you guys, mainly you two, can get up there and change some of those erroneous laws that we have on the books, things will look a whole lot different. And that's my spill.
See, the lack of education, the lack of definition makes a human being be an animal. And misinformation brings about a barbaric attitude and thinking because someone is different. Just because someone says something you may not agree with or you don't like, that don't give you the right to kill them. And the media plays a big part in this. Politicians play a big part in this. And that's who floods the airwaves. Things that we see, things that we hear. Even the educational system. Dewey, Kant, and Hegel in the early 1900s. We stole on the educational paradigm that got started in the early 1900s in this 2012. And we got all these smart people in Washington, D.C. I mean, how smart you gotta be? I don't have no degrees. And how come a man like me that don't have letters, how can I be learned? But then yet you got folks who hold positions, got titles. And that is the foundation for all the crux that's happening in our community. Everybody got something to say about the effect of something. You cannot stop a problem if we keep talking about the effect. No, you have to address the cause. That's the only way you can stop what's happening. What caused a human being to do what they do? What caused George Zimmerman to do what he do, to act like how he act like? That's something that was learned. That's a learned behavior from a child. No child that's born in this world born to hate no other human being. No child in this world is born to hate another human being. That's a learned behavior from someone. And to address the thing about the saggy pants stuff, when the young black man, when he becomes acquainted with who he is, that'll change his whole mindset. Until you have information in your mind to give you power, that's the only way you can change your reality. That's the only way you can change what you do. Lack of information up here, lack of knowledge, a human being is reduced to the level of an animal. Thank you.
If this night watch guy in Florida had been African American and he had shot and killed an unarmed white youth who had Skittles and tea, do you think he would have been arrested? Do you think there would have been much more attention? The question answers itself. Question answers itself, which is to say we still have issues of race and white supremacy and white attitudes and white privilege that need to be dealt with in this society, which is how we hopefully wind up with fewer yo-yos and more folks with some wit.
And one of the things that we've done wrong as a country that I think has led to a lot of the problems with the youth is that we've taken our jobs, our good blue-collar jobs, and we've shipped them to other countries where we don't respect their workers. Oh, we'll just pay them 25 cents a day to work. And there's not a lot of jobs for people that don't have a college education or a professional here in America. So if I'm a young man and I don't feel like I have a hope of going to college, I, as a man, get a sense of respect from the work that I do. So if I carry a gun, or if someone comes to me and says, well, if you deal drugs, you can work your way up the ladder, and we'll teach you, and we'll train you. That gives me a sense of accomplishment, and I might get into that instead of trying to play a system that's totally unfair. And a lot of Republicans, which I'm a Republican, but will say if we free up the system and have competition, we're going to do better as an economy. But to me, that's not competition. Our labor can't compete with 25 cents a day. So I think that as a Christian, I need to stand up and say that we need to legislate the morality of saying we need to treat workers fair. If we're going to do business with another country, then they're going to have the same labor laws that we are. Otherwise, our labor can't compete. We need to get the factories and that back. That's why 40, 50 years ago, young men and women dressed respectably was because they felt there was a sense of respect and maybe they could have a job. Now we've replaced all those jobs with drugs, and as a result, we're going to keep filling up our prisons, and we're going to keep having all these problems until somebody does something about the job situation.
If you have money, you buy time. If you don't have any money, you get time.
With a law like no retreat, stand your ground, people who are already adverse to respecting the rights of other citizens do harp on a law like that, and they use it. That's the case with Trayvon Martin. I believe most of the world is beginning to feel that. But we have that same law here in South Carolina, and we see that the racial profiling, has put many of our young men in a dangerous position because predators would have that law to protect them. That's the thing that I'm hoping that we would get an opportunity to address here tonight.
Through all of this, I think the number one thing we need to do is always, for those of us who are not registered, register and vote. And those who are registered, vote. Because guess what? In addition to the horrendous thing that happened to the Martin family, the worst part is that the prosecutor has more rights than the judge. The judge can't hear the case until he gets the case. The prosecutor decides whether or not a case is going to go before trial. And so that prosecutor in most cases are elected officials. So that's the power. Everything we do goes back to the power of voting. And not just when it's a presidential election, because those city elections, those municipalities elections, they're the ones that's most important because they affect you every day. Every day, the mayoral election, they affect you every day. So we need to vote and use our power to vote and remember that that's part of the solution. We've got to vote. Because the prosecutor did not take that case to trial, or not yet, because he has that power. And he has more power right now than the judge. The judge can't find him guilty. We can't get a jury until the prosecutors say, hey, I'm going to take this case. But please, let's vote.
Thank you.
The problem is we have selective enforcement. We have a Second Amendment that declares a well-regulated militia is necessary for the defense of a free state. The right to keep to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what it says, that's what it means. It does not mean a vigilante named George Zimmerman can run loose and pick on anybody he wants to kill.
If you just don't understand, if you don't have no love in your heart, they'll use any tool as a weapon to harm somebody or to even take a life. So my question is, what do you see as a solution to all of this? Because
I think the law legalizes hatred and legalizes angry attitudes about hatred. And this is the exact kind of problems we're seeing in middle school with bullying, and problems where it's okay if someone treats you disrespectfully for you to pull out a knife or beat them up or embarrass them. We have got to make sure we're suspending kids from school if they're showing violence in a school setting. And if someone does something like this, Representative, I think it ought to be illegal what George Zimmerman did. I don't think there should be any question at all. If I have a problem with you and I pull out a gun, there better be a very damn good reason for it.
Let me ask you a question,
Sir.
Stand your ground is one thing, but we got boundaries now. If I heard it right, this man followed this guy. This Zimmerman followed this guy, and they knew him for this. They knew him for stalking. I mean, if somebody kept following me, I would think you coming to hurt me. And if he did fight this guy, I think he had a right.
Could you explain to the audience the difference between a public defender with 1,600 cases per person, per defender, one person, compared with one solicitor? How many cases one solicitor usually have in South Carolina?
Well, I'm not sure how many cases that solicitor has, but he has a staff. He has a complete police department behind him. He has a complete lab behind him to process evidence. And he has all types of positive things behind him. The boys that I met in jail that have been there for 20 years, all they had was a lawyer. In one case, he was a drunk lawyer who made the wrong moves. I've seen that. In the other case, you had a public defender. Now, if you get into trouble and you hire a lawyer and you pay big bucks, you're going to get some power behind you. But if you go to a public defender, you have nothing behind you. I've had a case that Reverend Collins and I are dealing with right now. The woman goes into court, the lawyer didn't even know what the case was about, how to get a continuance. It was a public defender. You can't blame the public defender. You can't handle 1,600 cases. So there has to be some changes. There has to be a fairness. You know, if you're a non-white, because the Hispanics also have the same problems. If you're a non-white, you're going to need to get a leg up to deal in the judicial system. And that's what we're trying to do, come up with solutions.
The reason I asked that question is because in the past 3 years, we've been able to make some major changes with the public defender office. For example, they just been able to get insurance. They just started making a decent salary, and we're going to recruit something like 550 new public defenders start next year. Mm-hmm. And that's going to ease them, I think, probably about maybe 500 some cases that they're going to be relieved from. Which means then, with all the rest of the things that we've done for the office, equal access to the solicitor office, they're going to have a good chance of winning some cases. But right now, as we speak, if you mess around and get in trouble, you ain't got no lawyer, you in bad shape. And that's been going on in South Carolina for a long time. Even though they crack down on laws, they make all these crazy laws, they don't fund the public defender office, which handle 95% of those cases. That's why these kids going to jail. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are innocent, but one person with 16 cases ain't no kind of
1,600.
I mean 1,600 cases.
Yeah,
ain't no kind of way he gonna win no case.
But this is a key step right here.
It's changing, yeah.
This is a key step right here. Thank you all for being here.
And people ought to be able to, I like wearing a baseball cap. I hope that doesn't become illegal. I mean, we should all be able to dress how we feel comfortable and not be judged for it. The reality is, I think men and women, black and white folks, have to be able to come together, and you and I have talked about this so many times. We have to all work together. If there's an issue, we have to be able to stand side by side and judge each other for who we are, just like Dr. King told us, not for the color of our skin or our gender.
Primary it starts at home. We need mothers, fathers to be a mother and a father. It starts from home. Secondary comes to our great politicians. Comes from there, and then secondary is going to be schools, pastors, aunties, neighbors. It takes a village to raise children. What we have lost from the past years is that long time ago, you had neighbors looking out for kids. It was okay for another neighbor to correct the parents of a kid. It was okay for a neighbor to say, listen, you need to be home because the street lights are on.
Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. I believe that Trayvon Martin, in this case here, has happened for a reason because all too often, our community falls prey to its own short-sighted actions. That means we approach a situation at a sprint when we need to understand it's a marathon to justice. We can't stop just at this case until justice is served. We need to continue until justice is served for our communities and all our communities.